Good afternoon, one and all. I welcome you all on behalf of the President of Dental Council of India to the first live stream webinar of Dental Council of India on the first in the subject of orthodontics and dental-facial orthopedics. At the outset, I trust all of you are safe from pandemic storm. However, it is heartening to note that amidst of all this chaos, the thirst for the knowledge has not been quenched. This webinar surely a witness to the undying spirit of man. Having said that, I take this opportunity to congratulate and thank our beloved President Dr. Majumdar sir. His dream of taking the dentistry to the next level of excellence, and along with the immense efforts of Dr. Saga sir, DCA Secretary and Chairman Webinar Committee and DCA member, has resulted in successful conducting of series of webinar sessions. My sincere appreciation and thanks to the team behind the stream for successful implementation of this webinar, which is being aired and viewed across the nation and around the globe. It is indeed another feather in the cap of DCI. Hats off you all, sir. I liken DCI President sir to the great philosopher Aristotle, who said that the greatest of all pleasure is the pleasure of learning. We learn every day. We learn from environment, we learn from animal, and we learn from human beings. The best example to give today is the prevailing COVID-19 situation, which has a huge impact only on human. The earlier speaker, Dr. Aswath Narayanan, Dr. Srivastava, Dr. Mohan, Dr. Balaji Manohar, all recently highlighted all the aspects of COVID and its management. There are some instructions to the attendees. I request their attention. DCA webinars are free of cost for all attendees. The attendees will have to register for each webinar separately. At the time of registration, complete and proper details must be furnished, since the same will be captured for generating certificate and CDE points. No request for any change or modification in their details shall be considered. They are advised to sit throughout the session without any interpretation or without any disturbances. And each certificate of attendance will be conferred to all the attendees, including undergraduates, international attendees, and non-dentists on the registered email. CD points will be awarded to the dentists registered with the State Dental Council and Tribunals of India. Certificate will be sent to the attendees by email within 3 days of conclusion of each webinar who have attended the entire session of webinar uninterrupted. Please check your junk email in case you are not getting a proper mail. And all of you, in case any queries or issues are requested to contact through the mail. The mail address is webinardci@gmail.com. Smile is a curve that sets everything straight. Orthodontics said that is straight in order to create a beautiful smile to the person who seeks orthodontic treatment. It is indeed a vibrant specialty. In resonance with this word, we have with us a vibrant speaker, Dr. N.R. Krishnaswamy, who is going to enlighten us on malocclusion and its consequences. Dr. N.R. Krishnaswamy is working as a Vice Principal and HOD in the Department of Orthodontics, Ragas Dental College and Hospital. He is a good administrator, clinician, and academician. He has graduated from GDC Chennai, then MDS from KMC Manipal, MR from College of Surgeon, Royal College of Surgeon, Edinburgh. He is a diplomat of Indian Board of Orthodontics, and he also served as a past president of Indian Orthodontic Society. He is a former director and chairman of Indian Board of Orthodontics. I am sure his lecture will be a boon to the budding orthodontists and also to the practitioners and academicians alike. I welcome Dr. Krishnaswamy sir to give a lecture on this malocclusion and its consequences.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Professor Sainath. What better way to begin this than be introduced by none other than my good friend, Dr. Sainath, an esteemed member of the Dental Council of India. I deem it an honor to be invited by the Dental Council of India to be on this webinar platform. What better way to spend the time during this pandemic other than to educate ourselves? And the DCI needs to be richly congratulated for using education as a medium to reach out to people by organizing a series of webinars for the benefit of all its members. I am indeed grateful to the President of the Dental Council of India, Dr. Mazumdar, for playing a visionary role and for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. As has been mentioned, I am a faculty at the prestigious Ragas Dental College and Hospital, Chennai, and I've been associated with this institution for almost 30 years. And I take this opportunity to thank the management, specifically our chairman, Professor Kanagaraj, for giving me the chance to serve this institution. I have been asked to speak about the consequence of malocclusion. People have always been concerned about teeth which are crooked, protruding, or irregular. And this has been there till antiquity. Even from 1800 BC, there has been interest in people as to how the teeth could look better. And before we go into the consequence of what happens with the malocclusion, and worse still, what would happen if we don't correct it, it is worthwhile to look at some of the learning objectives of today's webinar. I'd like to introduce what an occlusion is and then tell you what malocclusion means. Thereafter, I'd also like to highlight as to how dentistry in particular and orthodontics specifically fits into the entire gamut of health and how oral health is important for all of us. There is a paradigm shift as to what the goals of modern orthodontic treatment are, and this science is evolved, and I'd like to highlight about some of the modern goals of orthodontics, which primarily focuses on the importance of soft tissue as against hard tissue that has been the focus in the past. Then, of course, I'd like to share what would happen if one had a malocclusion and how to go about fixing it. Orthodontics is the oldest specialty in dentistry. It is in 1850, Kingsley, an American dentist, who showed interest in the specialty and spoke about having straight teeth. But nevertheless, it was Dr. Edward Angle who gave a lot of scientific data. And way back in 1900, his primary interest was in prosthodontics, and he was looking at methods of aligning teeth. So he wanted some standard. But to set standards for aligning teeth, one must know what normal must be. And that's why he introduced us to the concept of normal occlusion. Among his many contributions is what an ideal occlusion is all about. And as students, you're all aware that Angle gave us the Angle's classification of malocclusion as class 1, class 2, and class 3. But prior to that, he gave us the standards for what an ideal occlusion should be. And in an ideal occlusion, the individual should have a molar, which is what is called as a class 1 relationship. The teeth must be well aligned, and the individual must have an ideal overjet and overbite. So that constituted ideal occlusion. And when there is a departure from this ideal, it is referred to as malocclusion. Yet another contribution that Engel did was, prior to him, people are looking at only alignment of teeth, but Engel is the one who focused on how the teeth must fit each other or they must occlude. So if the teeth don't occlude properly or the bite is off, it is termed as malocclusion. He went further to design several appliances and form treatment strategies for treating malocclusion. But he was very dogmatic in his view that whenever a malocclusion is corrected, the individual must be left with a full complement of teeth. So his primary focus was ideal occlusion, and the outcome of treatment was based on occlusion. And he believed that if the occlusion is set right, everything else, including the face and the function, would take care of itself. So if the teeth don't fit properly, it is referred to as malocclusion. Malocclusion comes in several hues. It may be something very simple as this, which is very visible and also easy to diagnose. This is commonly referred to as a diastema when you see a space between the front teeth. It does not require any specific diagnostic tools to recognize this, and it is fairly easy to correct it. A little more difficult is a condition where you not only have space, but the space is distributed elsewhere. And in addition to spacing, there may be incidents of a teeth which is rotated, which requires a little more effort to correct it. Then comes a malocclusion of little more severity, wherein a teeth may not erupt into the mouth or it may be impacted. Like in this individual, you find that the lateral incisor is not erupted, the canine is retained, and this has also resulted in a space in the midline or the diastema. These are all considered to be relatively simple, although I am using the term simple, severe, and complex just from a layman's point of view, and that is not how the severity of the malocclusion is characterized. When you get into something more severe, here you find that the canine is totally placed out of the arch, and this is called as ectopic eruption, and this would require a lot more diagnostic acumen and still stringent treatment protocols to align it. Here we find an individual who's got a very severe malocclusion because the two lower teeth are completely out of the arch, and it is virtually impossible to align them unless one uses fixed appliance, let alone have extraction of teeth. Then comes situation wherein malocclusion can be confined to one jaw, or most often, as we see in this picture, that it can affect both the maxillary and mandibular dental arches and require multiple corrections like closing of space, aligning of teeth, correcting of overjet, correcting of crowding, so on and so forth. When the malocclusion is confined only to the dentition and the alveolus, it is referred to as a dentalveolar malocclusion. The fact being that the underlying jaw bases are well positioned, but the problem is confined only to the teeth and the alveolar area. Malocclusion can either be due to irregular teeth, or it can have a problem in its foundation, namely the jaw bases. This individual, it is apparent, has what is called as a skeletal malocclusion, caused primarily due to a mandible which is not long enough or which is retrognathic. And furthermore, the lower jaw is rotated downward and backward, giving him a long face. With the result, the teeth don't cross each other or produces what is called as an anterior open bite. So this has both a skeletal component in that the mandible is intrusive, the face is long, and he also has an anterior open bite and endon-molar relationship. This individual also has a skeletal class 2, but it is different from the previous patient in the sense the lower jaw height is less. This individual's skeletal class 2 is also caused due to a deficient mandible or a retrognathic mandible, but the problem is opposite in the vertical dimension, in that the upper and the lower teeth overclose, or one can virtually see no lower teeth at all, and this is called as a skeletal deep bite. Yet another malocclusion that has a skeletal component to it is what is called as a skeletal class 3 malocclusion, wherein this individual has a problem with the maxilla not being long enough and the mandible has grown excessively and the lower facial height has increased. So she has a malocclusion which is constituted through a skeletal problem and a dentalia problem. Further, there are some situations where there can be a birth defect or congenital anomaly. One of the common congenital defects that we as dental surgeons encounter is cleft lip and palate. Among other things, these individuals have aberrant growth, they have missing teeth, and they also have malaligned teeth. Part of it is caused due to the underlying cleft problem, and part of it is due to the surgery which is unavoidable at a young age, resulting in impediment to normal jaw growth. And this requires a multidisciplinary approach, not only an orthodontist, but the services of pediatric dentists, general dentists, restorative dentists, maxillofacial surgeons, and plastic surgeons. For a long time, the goal of orthodontic treatment has been to align teeth, and Angle gave us the norms. When we look at finishing the occlusion, we always focus on having a class 1 molar relationship, a class 1 canine relationship. The teeth must be well aligned so that the arches are well formed. And to ensure that whatever is being corrected, the lower incisor must be upright on the basal bone and the roots must not be too close to each other. So this has been for a very long time the goal of orthodontic treatment, and every orthodontist would somehow strive to attain a goal where it fits in to this Angle's idea of optimal occlusion. But then, is malocclusion a disease? What will happen if you don't correct it? This question is addressed if you look at the larger picture of overall health. In the past, somebody was considered to be healthy if they did not have a disease or if they were not infirm. But the World Health Organization in recent times has classified the goal for healthcare. And what it implies now, it's not only absence of disease, but to say that somebody is healthy, one must have a complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And the goal of any treatment, whether it is medicine or dentistry, whether it is restorative or orthodontics, is now to maintain and enhance the patient's quality of life. This is something similar to a plastic surgeon who fixed the nose of a crooked individual. A plastic surgeon is a health professional, but not having a straight nose is not a disease. Similarly, there are psychologists who prescribe substances like Prozac for people who feel depressed and who want to feel better than being well. And if you look at dentistry, the placement of a veneer or bleaching the teeth so that it could enhance its appearance, or placing or doing a gingival procedure to improve the aesthetic appeal of an individual, all this constitutes an enhancement and not necessarily a treatment for disease. And when we look at what these things do to a people, it improves the quality of life. So this is a term which is being used very frequently. And this concept, which is used among many disciplines, implies that an individual experience must be so good that he should feel very happy or satisfied with himself, both physically, mentally, and of course should be able to function well. Specifically, we have what is health-related oral quality of life or health-related quality of life, and which means that the individual should feel healthy and he should not be in any pain or distress or should not have any psychological issues because of his health or appearance. And more specifically, when we look at dentistry, we are looking at oral health related quality of life. So when an individual suffers from orofacial pain, then we know that his quality of life is not good. Similarly, when an individual suffers from an inferiority complex and has a psychological distress because of his facial appearance, then we know that his quality of life is poor and he certainly needs intervention. This can be in the form of orthodontics or orthodontics and other restorative procedures or orthodontics and maxillofacial surgery. So what then is the current goal of modern orthodontic treatment? Earlier we said that Engel's primary focus was occlusion. So he believed that the teeth were well aligned, the face would automatically look all right. But today we know that the focus is not on aligning the teeth, but the focus is to ensure that the individual's appearance must look good. And when we talk of appearance, we're looking at facial proportions, the relationship of the lip, both at rest and during smile. And this is proven to have an improvement in the quality of life of the individual and in social well-being. We are not saying function is not important, but the priority seems to be more appearance than function. We also strive to achieve normal function. So once we have normal function, then the individual is comfortable because he'll be able to eat well, chew well, speak well, and breathe well. So this brings about what is called as physiologic adaptation, wherein when you cannot correct the problem completely, our goal is at least to lessen the burden so that there is good adaptation and the individual is able to function well. We also strive to obtain optimal proximal and occlusal contact of teeth, because only when you have proper contact, then the individual will have a healthy dentition and will not be predisposed to dental caries or periodontal problem or other muscular issues and temporomandibular joint issues. As orthodontists, our goals are what has been highlighted. But as dentists, we all share a common goal. We all strive for longevity and stability of the dentition. So whatever facet of dentistry one may belong to, our ultimate aim is to ensure that the individual has a set of natural teeth for the rest of his life. And the way the orthodontists strive to achieve this stability is ensuring that the skeletal, dental, and soft tissue are in balance and there is functional equilibrium. So what has been the focus? Earlier, according to Engel, it was the occlusion, but now the face is the focus. And when we talk of face, we look at the proportion of the upper, middle, and lower third of the face, the prominence of the upper and the lower lip, the size and position of the upper and lower lip, the relationship of the lip to the teeth, the amount of incisor that gets displayed at rest, and the amount of incisor that gets displayed during smile. So the integuments of the soft tissue is essential. When we look at it from a functional point of view, if you have a good occlusion, which I'm sure all of you will agree whether you're a restorative dentist or a prosthodontist or a maxillofacial surgeon, as long as the occlusion is good, function is guaranteed. So when the occlusion is good, there is very little trauma to the teeth, there is very little altered muscle function, and this will make sure that the temporomandibular joint will not be injured. So the soft tissue in temporomandibular joint, namely the articular disc, will be well positioned and function properly. So that is the soft tissue which needs to be taken care of by aligning teeth. In the past, if an individual came to us with malocclusion, we look at him and say we will retract his incisors and then the soft tissue would get adjusted. But today, the concept is reversed, or what is called as reverse engineering. We feel that the starting point should be soft tissue. We should figure out how this soft tissue will look at the end of the treatment before deciding on what appliance to place, or should we be treated with extraction or non-extraction. So earlier we used to start with teeth and then look at the face, and the diagnosis was primarily by looking at dental cast and cephalometrics. But today the focus is more on clinical examination and figuring out what the soft tissue imbalance is, and then go back and correct the teeth to achieve soft tissue balance. So there is a shift in focus. So whenever there is a shift in idea and the fundamental principle of any clinical science is altered or a new thought process, it is referred to as a paradigm. So now we are in a paradigm where the soft tissue is the focus, and that's why it is called as the soft tissue paradigm. So this is taken from the popular textbook by Profit, Server, and Ackerman, The Contemporary Orthodontics. So this gives a wonderful table which talks about what is past and what is current. In Engel's era, the primary goal was to somehow achieve an ideal occlusion. But today, we do want to achieve an ideal occlusion, but the focus is more on soft tissue. Engel felt that the jaw basis should be normal, but we know that even if the jaw basis is not ideal, as long as we can establish good function, the individual can live with it and function efficiently. The parameter of hard and soft tissue relationship was looked upon by Angle from the sense of hard tissue. So he wanted to have ideal hard tissue proportions, and he felt that the soft tissue would be taken care of. That is not true, and today what we follow is the reverse. In the past, we used to use dental cast, intraoral radiograph, and panoramic radiograph, and of course the cephalometrics to arrive at a diagnosis. But today, these are considered as secondary diagnostic protocols. The primary diagnosis is clinical evaluation from the point of view of assessing the individual's profile and frontal appearance and looking at proportions and balance. Our treatment goal is to somehow ensure that whatever we produce at the end of the treatment has a good appeal to the patient in terms of facial appearance. Once we achieve this, we know that the function would be taken care of. And if we have well-aligned teeth, that will synchronize with the temporomandibular joint, so the individual will not have any joint problem. And ultimately, the joint, the teeth, the supporting structures, the surrounding musculature, and the integument of the face will all be in harmony so that there is a balance and stability over time. So now let's look at the consequence of malocclusion. We all know that one of the most important things as human beings that we strive for is about our appearance. In fact, in the words of Miller, an evolutionary psychologist, the single most thing in everybody's mind is somehow look good in the eye of others. If you don't look really pleasing, or if an individual is not happy with his own appearance, then this is considered to be a social handicap. The common caricature of somebody who's not bright, who's retarded, who's dull, and has some deficiency is, among other things, to have teeth which are sticking out and protruded. Which not only uses a broom to fly, but also has a lower jaw which is very prominent, or mandibular prognathis. You can imagine the mental makeup of this individual. I don't have to describe his malocclusion. We all can see his teeth, but his eye says it all. We know that individuals like this have a severe inferiority complex. They have very low self-esteem and they do not think very highly of themselves. And during their growing years, when they are in school, they suffer from a psychological distress, because it is said that even teachers only look at people who are pleasing or attractive. And an individual who is not so pleasing to look at often misses the attention of the teachers, and so they don't expect them to perform well. So most of these individuals who are not pleasing to look at are somehow assumed by teachers to be poor performers. The student also suffers from a severe complex that he doesn't put in his best. He knows that his peers always ridicule him, and no matter what he does, he'll never get the credit. And later on, as one moves in life, the ability to carve a career or get a right job, and of course to get a right partner, is all affected. And this is all being scientifically validated. But this is why malocclusion is considered to be a social handicap. Now see what a profound influence orthodontic treatment has had on this individual. No doubt his teeth has gone back, but I'm sure you will all notice the spark in his eye, which is primarily due to the fact that as the teeth went in, we not only moved teeth, but we moved his mental status, and he is a happy individual, well fitted into the society, and is willing to make a go of his life. This has not only been documented in the dental and scientific literature, but it also makes an appearance in some of the popular magazines, including the Time magazine. And this is a cover issue of Time magazine, which was published the last few years. It talks about the importance of physical appearance, and malocclusion comes into this realm. If somebody is not good looking, then it is considered to be a handicap, just like somebody has a physical problem. Not having a good looking appearance, primarily because of improper facial proportion, is a handicap. So several millions are spent every year on trying to make one look good or enhance their appearance. So people spend a lot of money on cosmetic surgery, and so do we as dentists and orthodontists. We prescribe orthodontic treatment, we prescribe veneers, we encourage bleaching. It's not because it will make them get a new job, but it will certainly make them go places in life. Is there a relationship between the severity of the malocclusion and the psyche of the individual? This lady does not have a severe malocclusion. All she has is some amount of space between her teeth. But if you look at her, you know that bothers her because she's not relaxed. But on the contrary, this young lad has a severe problem. He has a cleft lip and palate which has been operated. You can see that he has a distorted nose and some of his teeth are missing. But if you notice, he doesn't look distressed. He seems to be quite happy with himself. So that's probably the good thing. Why does this happen? If you have a minor problem, the individual is always nervous because he doesn't know if somebody else is noticing the irregularity of the teeth or the space between the anteriors. On the contrary, if you have a major issue, it is taken for granted that the individual will know how the society would react because he would have got used to the fact that everybody will talk about his looks, and after some point in life, it doesn't bother him anymore. The next important sequelae is compromised oral function in the presence of a malocclusion. Functions like swallowing and chewing, and the speech that emanates from an individual who has maloccluded teeth, and the altered muscle function which can lead to bruxism, and eventually temporomandibular joint, all these functions could be compromised. Now this lady has what is called as a class 2, and mandible is very retrusive. But look at her occlusion. There's hardly any occlusion at all. The lower and upper teeth don't meet each other. The lower teeth are impinging on the palatal mucosa, and it's virtually impossible for her to chew because we all need the incisors for incising food, which is a luxury that this individual does not have. And for biting the teeth, we need the molars. You find that some of the posteriors are in crossbite. For carrying the food, we need the canines. The upper and the lower canines don't meet each other. It is not that people die because of malocclusion or people go on starvation, because I know even if you don't have teeth, we can still survive. But the question is, they have to make a lot of adaptation. It is not impossible, but it is very difficult. The individual has to make enormous attempts to ensure that they can chew well and swallow their food. We have what is called as a masticatory efficiency index, which looks at the occlusion and the individual's ability to masticate food. And people with certain kind of malocclusion, like what you see here, and when they have anterior or a posterior crossbite, or even if they have missing teeth, or if they have a periodontal problem, then their ability to chew food is less. So they have low masticatory efficiency index. Over time, if they don't get corrected, they somehow tend to settle for less well masticated food and make adaptations to eat food which are easy to digest. And scientifically, there's a term called food intake ability. So the tendency for food intake becomes much less in these individuals who have this kind of malocclusion. Now, this lady had orthodontic treatment, and thereafter my colleague maxillofacial surgeon did a jaw surgery to bring the jaw together, and this was done by my colleague Dr. Veerabahu, and this is what you see at the end of the treatment. Not only do the teeth fit well, but the jaws are well proportioned. She is a very happy individual, not only because she has a good pleasing profile, but she can eat well and enjoy whatever she is eating. When we have space between the teeth, the air tends to escape and the quality of the speech is not very good. This is referred to as lisp, and most common sibilants that are affected are sounds with S and Z. When we also have teeth which are irregular, the tongue does not come in contact with the inner surface of the upper teeth, so this produces a difficulty in some of the sounds like thick and D, and this is called as linguoalveolar stop. So pronouncing these words become difficult. When an individual has a class 3 or the lower teeth which is ahead of the upper, words like F and V are difficult to pronounce, because when we say F and V, there is a contact between the lower lip and the incisal edges of the upper incisors. So when there is a reverse overjet, there is a distortion in this labiodental fricatives. And finally, when the upper and the lower teeth do not cross each other, when we have an open bite, then the individual once again has problems with linguodental fricatives. Words like the, school, and church are very difficult to pronounce for these individuals. It is not that they cannot speak, but then they have to make a lot of adjustments, and the system has to adapt to get used to this distorted speech emanating from a malocclusion. If the teeth are irregular, there is a tendency for premature contact. We can notice that one lower incisor is completely out of the arch, and when the individual closes the mouth, there is a premature contact that the lower incisor comes in contact with the upper lateral incisor, and the rest of the posterior teeth do not occlude. So this is a very uncomfortable position, and the individual is often searching for a better way to bite. So the jaw is constantly moving. So over time, with constant jaw movement, the individual develops what is called as a muscle spasm. And if done both during the day and night, this is referred to as bruxism. And bruxism has multiple etiology. One among them is irregularly placed teeth or premature occlusion. Bruxism also can be due to stress, but malocclusion can precipitate it and make it worse. So if the individual develops a soreness of the muscle, it can eventually lead to a problem in the joint. It is characterized by a noise which is called as clicking. There's a ruffling sound which is known as crepitus. They may have pain during opening and closing, and the extent to which they can open or close or move the jaw from one side to another becomes less. So over time, this produces a series of conditions which is referred to as myofascial pain dysfunction syndrome. And malocclusion is one of the primary causes. It starts from a maloccluded teeth, an improper occlusion, an altered function, a compromised muscle involvement, leading to a joint issue, eventually resulting in limited movement of the joint. So look at this individual. She has an issue with the temporomandibular joint because she has irregular teeth. You can see the amount the jaw moves to the left and right when she is opening, and much worse when she closes her mouth. You find that the jaw comes and the incisors approximate, and it is not comfortable, and the patient moves her jaw to the left or the right. You can see a close-up view as to how when she's biting, she brings the incisor, that's the first point of contact, and thereafter, because of the discomfort, she moves her jaw to one side and trying to get some semblance of occlusion at the back. So this, if left unattended to, will produce a temporomandibular issue. One of the most common reasons for children to have fractured teeth is because of lip competence. This is more common in boys than girls, but today we know that girls are just as aggressive as boys. If they have incompetent lip, if the teeth are protrusive, if the maxilla is prominent, or if the upper and the lower lip do not come together, then these incisors are very vulnerable to fracture. And most often this is during contact sports, or it could be even otherwise. So when there is a fracture, it has several consequences. It could be as mild as just chipping of the incisal edge. It could be like losing substantial enamel, and the individual may not notice it and may just not bother because of the age with the fractured teeth. But our restorative dentists are put into action whenever the color of the teeth changes, and we find that the tooth has lost its vitality, and if left unattended to, the tooth may be lost. In severe cases, there's not only fracture of the incisors, there could be avulsion and the tooth could be lost. Look at this individual. She has got broken down teeth. And the reason that she has got such broken down teeth and dental caries is because of malocclusion. Due to the poor alignment of teeth, no matter how well this individual brushes, she is not able to maintain a good oral hygiene. There is improper contact between adjacent teeth, so the natural cleansing efficiency is lost. Even after brushing, there is a lot of stagnation of food particles, and eventually leading to a compromised oral hygiene, plaque accumulation, bacterial invasion, and breaking down of the hard tissue. This lady is a senior executive, She's not willing to open her mouth, and you can understand why, because she's very concerned about the fact that she has got broken down teeth and she's got malaligned teeth. And first thing she said was, no matter how well I brush, I always seem to have teeth that are chipping off. And you can understand the plight because it's virtually impossible to maintain a good oral hygiene with so much of malocclusion. Sure enough, we did some orthodontic treatment, and considering that she's an adult and a senior executive, she wanted some aesthetic braces. We had to do away with the lateral incisor on the left, which is broken down, and on the right side also because it was compromised. With colleagues, we did some veneers in the anterior, and now you can see how this individual is happy to show off her teeth. And if you notice, she has no decay elsewhere. It's only in the anterior where there has been severe crowding. The lateral incisor is broken down. The central incisor, because of its altered axial inclination and excessive brushing, the enamel is worn off, leading to the gingival recession. And this is what was accomplished for this individual. People who have irregular teeth also suffer periodontal consequences. Once again, this is due to improper contact between the adjacent teeth. And if you have maloccluded teeth, then there is a lot of trauma because when the individual bites, the force is not transmitted along the long axis, and this will lead to abnormal loading of the teeth, which compromises the periodontium, and over time it will lead to bone getting resorbed. The teeth may start moving, and it may also produce jiggling. So this individual has a severe malocclusion. Her upper teeth are retroclined, and I'd like to draw your attention to the lower anterior. The gingiva is inflamed. She has no dental caries. She takes enormous efforts to maintain a good oral hygiene, but no matter what she does, this is how it is. Because the upper teeth and lower teeth do not come in contact, my orthodontic colleagues will call this a class 2 DIP 2 malocclusion. Because of the retrusion of the incisors, there is a deep overbite, and this bite is impinging on the labial mucosa in the lower, and the lower incisor is impinging on the palatal mucosa in the upper. So there's a lot of gingival inflammation. So we did send her to a periodontist to contain the inflammation, and thereafter we did orthodontic treatment. You may notice that the lower incisors don't match up because she had one lower incisor that is congenitally missing. But in spite of that, this is a reasonably good occlusion. But besides a good occlusion, look at the color of the soft tissue. She's got pink, orange peel-like appearance of the gingiva, and my periodontist colleague will vouch for the fact that this is a sign of a healthy gingiva. And that's how she finished. There is no evidence of bleeding, there is no gingival inflammation, and she's a very, very happy individual, not only because the teeth is aligned, but she has a healthy periodontium, and both these have contributed to an improvement in her smile and to the quality of life. There can also be periodontal consequences besides pure inflammation alone. An altered axial inclination of the teeth has poor bone support. It causes abnormal stress on the underlying bone, leading to teeth which are constantly moving or jiggling, and if left unattended to, can even result in premature loss of permanent teeth. This lady was all of 27 years. You can look at the altered axial inclination of the upper and the lower incisor. The lower incisor is hitting on the upper, and because of the trauma from occlusion, the teeth is already mobile. She had already lost one lower incisor, not due to caries or trauma, but due to a poor periodontal support. And that's all due to a malocclusion and altered axial inclination, resulting in abnormal stress being transmitted to the underlying structure. The radiograph reveals the extent of bone loss in a 27-year-old individual who was otherwise healthy, and no other systemic reasons for such a huge bone loss. And this is a local problem. So we did take the help of periodontists. We did some periodontal treatment, and thereafter did orthodontic treatment to align. And this is how she finished up. Besides the good alignment of teeth, you can see that the periodontal apparatus looks very healthy and pink. And the radiograph shows that the bone is beginning to regenerate. We also have a wire on the inside to stabilize the correction. And hopefully in a few years, once the bone takes up completely, we may even do away with the permanent retainer. And that's how she is. She's happy to smile because she has healthy gums and a pleasing smile. Does malocclusion interfere with normal growth? This young girl has what is called as a crossbite. She has an anterior crossbite and a posterior crossbite. And if you notice, the lower teeth is ahead of the upper, and the lower jaw is shifted to the right because the maxilla is not wide enough, and she has a functional shift resulting in a crossbite. The reason for this is the condyle on one side seems to be longer than the other. So if you notice, the condyle on the left side seems to be longer than the condyle on the right. So the jaw is moving to the normal side. Since the condyle is longer on the left, the jaw is moving to the right. That's why she's got a facial asymmetry and the chin is deviated. She didn't bother much about it, nor did her parents be concerned. She said the child is good looking. And this is what she landed up by the time she had permanent teeth. She had severe malocclusion. The anterior crossbite persisted, but the worst scenario is it left a permanent asymmetry with the jaw completely being shifted to one side. And now that she is a teenager, because of peer pressure, she's conscious of the fact that she looks different, and she looks different because she has an asymmetry primarily caused due to an atypical length of the mandible. When an individual has a maxilla which is not wide enough, this is referred to as maxillary transverse deficiency. No doubt the problem is in the maxilla, but it can also have an impact in the opposing jaw. So this girl had a constricted maxilla and the upper incisors were retroclined. With the result, the lower jaw did not grow enough. She is 10 years of age, and you can see that the lower jaw is behind the upper because the maxilla is not wide enough to allow the mandible to express its normal anteroposterior growth. And that's how convex she looks. No doubt she's got a long nose, but it is evident that the facial convexity is also contributed or made worse due to the fact that she has a retrusive lower jaw. And the etiology of this retrusive lower jaw is a maxilla which was not wide enough and did not allow the normal expression of growth of the mandible, and the growth of the mandible was restricted. So if you see her at the age when she is growing, at the age of 8, 9, and 10, then we can intervene with devices which can expand the maxilla. Once the maxilla is expanded, you can see that there is a device which is called as a banded or a bonded palatal expander. And after treatment, the width of the maxilla is more. Without doing much to the mandible, you automatically see that the mandible has come in front and it has become wide. And what was an incisor which was retrusive, now it has been aligned. So once the incisors have been aligned, the maxillary and mandibular teeth fit well. But that apart, you can see that she's got a perfect occlusion with the normal overjet and an ovobite and a molar relationship. And the picture on top tells you how she was prior to treatment. And the picture at the bottom shows what has happened. She still has a prominent nose, but the mandible has come forward. It is little unfortunate that I'm not able to show the entire face because, these are all patient material and sensitive and they do not like it to be displayed in public. But you can appreciate the fact that by widening the maxilla, the normal growth potential of the mandible is expressed and she has a straighter profile. The only convexity is due to the prominence of the nose, which if she chooses to, she can have a rhinoplasty. But this girl seems to like what she has and wanted to live with that nose. When the maxilla is narrow and there is a disproportion between the size of the maxilla and the size of the teeth, sometimes the teeth don't erupt. The upper canine is one of the last permanent teeth to erupt in the maxilla, and if there is inadequate space or if it is positioned differently, it is known as ectopic eruption. And in this individual, the left upper lateral incisor and canine was missing. So when we took a radiograph, we realized that there is ectopic eruption of the canine due to lack of space in the maxilla not being wide enough. And the canine has migrated and virtually eaten into the root of the lateral incisor. Now we don't have a choice other than to have the lateral incisor removed. So it's not a normal looking lateral incisor, it is malformed. But nevertheless, the lateral incisor is gone. And this is a consequence of inadequate space and impaction of the canine and altered path of the eruption, resulting in premature loss of a permanent teeth. One of the biggest challenges that we all have as far as etiology of malocclusion. And one controversial area has been the role of breathing. While there are many that claim that a child who has an enlarged tonsils or an adenoid or a deviated nasal septum tends to breathe through the mouth and thereafter have a malocclusion characterized by an open bite. There is sufficient evidence to suggest that individuals who have malocclusion characterized by an increased facial height, a retrusive mandible, also have a tendency to keep their mouth open. The reason being, the upper and the lower lips do not come in contact because the lower lip is retrusive. So establishing lip proximity is difficult. Since their lower facial height is increased, it needs a lot of effort to bring the lips together. So if the lips don't come together, there is what is called as obligatory breathing, and the individual learns to breathe through his mouth. And mouth breathing produces several problems. And this is a pathognomic picture of an individual who has a characteristic adenoid facies, or a patient who breathes through the mouth. He has a long face, the mandible is retrusive, the lips are incompetent, the chin is weak, the lower lip is reverted, the upper and the lower teeth do not approximate, and there is absence of ovobite or anterior open bite. So when you take a cephalometrics, we don't only look at the facial outline and the teeth and the maxilla and the mandible, we can also assess the airway. And that is the airway which is visible. You can see the upper, middle and the lower airway. And when we have individuals who have a constricted airway, then mouth breathing is inevitable. Now when an individual breathes through his mouth with no other problem, then it is a pure mouth breathing which can be corrected. But today, one of the illness that is affecting the modern society, it is what is called as sleep disordered breathing or obstructive sleep apnea. This is multifactorial. This could be due to stress. This is commonly seen in individuals who are obese. This is the characteristic of individuals who have a high body mass index, who have a huge submental fat like what this person has, but also due to the fact that this chap has a mandible which is very retrusive. So when we have a retrusive mandible, the airway dimension becomes less. So he doesn't have a choice other than to open his mouth and breathe. And once he opens his mouth and breathe, over time, the tongue tends to fall back. There's a momentary cessation of breathing, and this is called as obstructive sleep apnea. And we have another colleague who's working a lot on this in our department. So the orthodontist has a role to play in correcting obstructive sleep apnea. So this is the occlusion. You can see that he has got a class 2 DIP2 with the mandible completely retrusive and the maxillary teeth extruded. But if I show you the next picture, you'll probably fall off your chair. That's how bad it is. He has virtually sheared off the gingival apparatus in the lower. The enamel is gone. You can see the root canal. And we know that the longevity of the teeth is questionable. All this is due to the fact that he has a retrusive mandible. The maxillary teeth has no support and it is over-erupted. It has produced a compromised gingival apparatus. It has brought about enamel loss, questioning the longevity of the teeth. But that's not what he came for. He was brought into my office by his wife, who said that it is very difficult for me because this man snores like a lion throughout. I'm okay to have a lion as a husband, but he is really scary because he gets up in the middle of the night and I feel that he's going to choke and die and something needs to be done. So it was referred to a ENT surgeon. So they said what you would require is some orthodontics, dental correction, jaw surgery, then of course some procedure like CPAP for correcting the sleep disorder. So today we have different diagnostic modalities which can three-dimensionally assess not only the hard tissue but also the soft tissue. Not only the soft tissue of the face but the soft tissue of the pharyngeal region. The red landmark is the pharyngeal airway, the upper, middle and lower pharyngeal airway, and you can notice that these numbers indicate that the pharyngeal volume is less in this individual, and the primary cause is because he's got a retrognathic mandible, which is secondary to a malocclusion caused due to retrusive maxillary incisors. So by the time I took impression, all his 4 lower incisors came away, which is good news for the prosthodontist and implantologist. We decided to do orthodontics to align his teeth. The idea being once we align his teeth, then it'd be easy for the oral surgeon to bring the jaw in front. And thereafter, the implantologist can put implants and restorative dentists can add some teeth on top. So that is what was done. We did orthodontic treatment. Thereafter, mandibular advancement surgery was done. Then an implant was placed and a prosthesis was provided. So that's how he is after completion, after being treated by an orthodontist to set the foundation right, by an oral surgeon to ensure that the jaw is positioned properly, by an implantologist to restore his missing teeth, and by a restorative dentist to make it look more aesthetic, and an ENT surgeon who could now work on his sleep disorder and make him sleep peaceful. So that's the outcome before and after of a computerized cone beam CT. You can notice the red area has increased tremendously and the volume has gone up several folds, indicating that the breathing pattern is now normal. So that's how he was, and thus he changed with the combined procedure. And that's the remarkable change in his facial profile, and the mandible is come in front. And now he's taking some interest in looking after himself, and you can see that he has changed his hairstyle too. Does malocclusion have abnormal consequence primarily because of the malocclusion, or can it induce other abnormal function? So these are referred to as compensatory muscle activity. This individual has a mandible which is not long enough, but he has an increased facial height, which is a familial pattern. So the tongue does not have enough volume, so he has a tendency to keep the tongue in front, and over time this becomes a habit. So he has what is called as a tongue thrusting habit. Once again, there is always a debate between cause and effect. There are some who claim that tongue thrust produces an open bite malocclusion, but there are conditions like this where the underlying malocclusion predisposes an individual to develop an altered muscle habit like tongue thrusting. Similarly, when the upper and the lower jaw are not aligned and the individual has a retrusive mandible, it's virtually impossible for this individual to bring his lips together. So this produces hyperactive upper lip. This is an old terminology. People also tend to use things like redundant lip, but the sum and substance is the upper lip does not function enough, and you can see that there is a flaccid lip. This individual has a class 2 with a retrusive mandible, but over time he has learned to have an adaptive function both during swallowing and during mastication. So he has what is called as a retained infantile swallow. So to establish an oral seal, whenever he swallows, the lower lip tends to get trapped behind his upper incisors. So this is a vicious cycle. Initially he has a class 2 and a lip trap, which lead to hyperactive mentalis muscle and prominence of the chin. But every time he swallows, there is puckering of mentalis. The increased muscle activity exerts pressure on the lingual surface of the upper incisor, eventually leading to proclination of the upper incisor. So this is something that can be corrected if seen very early, and once we bring about normal positioning of the mandible, the habit would get corrected on its own. Individuals who have a constricted maxilla often have an altered tongue position. Instead of the tongue resting on the palate, it tends to rest on the floor of the mouth. So once the tongue rests on the floor of the mouth, the cheek muscles become overactive, or this produces what is called as increased buccinator pressure. This again is a vicious cycle. Initially the position of the tongue is altered. The buccinator tends to compress, so it produces narrowing of the maxillary arch. As the maxillary arch gets narrowed, there is a forward thrust. There is increased proclination. When there is proclination, there is spacing between the teeth. And when there is proclination in the upper and the lower lip gets trapped, then it produces excessive display of the incisors and hyperactive mentalis muscle. And this is something that can be corrected if noticed early. There are also associated muscle habits. This individual has a class 3. He has a class 3 because his mother has a mandible which is prognathic, and he is just developing a class 3. In addition, he has an increased facial height. Since he is a class 3, the lower jaw is ahead of the upper. And since he has an open bite, the upper and the lower teeth do not touch each other. So the tongue is an organ which is always trying to probe, and it is probably the organ which functions the maximum in our body. So it is trying to probe the empty space, and over time he's developed a tongue-sucking habit. This girl here, she's biting a nail. Eventually, it started because she had some space between the upper teeth and the lower, the left, and she became very conscious. And we know that one of the characteristic features of individuals who are nervous or conscious, they tend to bite their nail. And now this malocclusion has resulted her in developing a habit which is very conducive to the malocclusion that she has. There are others who tend to bite their lower lip at times of stress, and this can be, again, either a lower lip biting causing proclination of the upper incisors, or the upper incisor being proclined and the lower being retroclined encourages the individual to have the lip between the upper incisors and then bite them. So in summary, in this limited time that I've had, hopefully I've told you about what occlusion is and what the contribution of angle is. I told you about the class 1, class 2 and class 3 malocclusion. And we said that in addition to malocclusion, a prelude is we should know what an occlusion is. And malocclusion can be very simple or severe. And the correct way to assess it is use certain indices to assess the severity of the malocclusion. Malocclusion can be confined only to the dentalular area. Then it is known as dentalular malocclusion, usually with a class 1 skeletal base. There are times we also have malocclusion wherein the jaw base itself can be affected. So we can have a class 2 caused due to a normal maxilla and a retrognathing mandible. We can have a class 2 caused due to prognathic maxilla and a normal mandible, or a class 2 caused due to a combination of prognathic maxilla and a retrognathing mandible. So all these are known as skeletal malocclusion. I also hopefully introduced you to the current goals of healthcare and gave you the term quality of life. And one should not look down the value of appearance, and it is very, very important for the psychological well-being of individuals. Among other specialties, orthodontics plays a very pivotal role in improving the psychology of individuals and giving them the feel-good factor. I highlighted the goals of modern orthodontic treatment. The emphasis has shifted from only looking at crooked teeth and bad bite to improving the soft tissue proportions and the balance, the position of the incisor in relation to the lip at rest and smile, and the position of the gingiva in relation to the upper incisors and the lip. We gave you concept of normal oral function and how that becomes important. I showed a few cases where it is essential to obtain proximal contact or normal occlusion so that growth can catch up and function can be optimized. And once we do all this, when the teeth, the underlying bony structure of the alveolus, the foundation, the maxilla and the mandible, the joint which connects the maxilla and the mandible, the temporomandibular joint, the equilibrium of the muscles, namely the buccinator and the tongue, and the soft tissue integument of the face, all have to be in harmony so that the longevity is established. So what I spoke to is about the importance of the psychological impact that malocclusion can have and the benefit of having malocclusion corrected. Then about the oral function, specifically swallowing and chewing, speech, altered muscle function and bruxism and temporomandibular disorder. Then about the vulnerability of the maxillary incisors to get fractured due to protrusive incisors. The probability of getting dental caries if the teeth are not well aligned due to stagnation of food and plaque accumulation. The deleterious consequences on the periodontium if the teeth are not aligned properly or if they are not loaded well. And then, of course, how during the growth period, there can be an interference with normal growth and development, like an example of a transverse maxillary deficiency restricting the growth of the mandible, or an anterior crossbite leading to a facial asymmetry. Then, of course, if you don't see teeth which are to be erupted or they don't follow the normal timetable, you should always suspect that the teeth are impacted and it has an ectopic eruption, and you should be aware of the consequences of ectopic eruption. The role of mouth breathing, how by correcting the malocclusion, the mouth breathing habit can be got away with. And in adults, how correcting the malocclusion in the growth period with devices which will normalize the position of the mandible. During adolescence, with certain kind of removal appliances which can keep the mandible in front. Then, of course, working with ENT surgeons and doing CPAP procedure. Then working with maxillofacial surgeons and doing either a single jaw or a double jaw procedure. And of course, with the ENT surgeon, the breathing pattern of an individual can be normalized. So if people have obstructive sleep apnea, the orthodontist plays a very pivotal role. And finally, the importance of muscle function, both from the point of view of the muscle causing malocclusion and how a malocclusion can produce muscle distress, and how a malocclusion can also lead to adaptive function or produce pernicious habits which are not conducive. I have been particularly very fortunate, and this is a saying which I'd like to quote. I've come this far in life because due to providential help, I've been in the right place at the right time. But besides thanking God above, I'd also like to thank several people who made this journey possible. Ragas Dental College and Hospital has given me a platform to nurture my goals, and it has been mutually beneficial. They gave me an opportunity to teach and to serve the students and the public. And I think I have done my share to ensure that the institution's name is come up. I'm immensely thankful to the management, Professor Kanagaraj and his family for the opportunity. My principal, Dr. Aragarsan, is a pillar of strength, and he never leaves any stone unturned, and has always been very encouraging, and his positive attitude has helped all of us grow in this institution. I am probably the oldest serving faculty member. Over the years, I've enjoyed the love and affection and respect of several faculty members and several students, and I'm immensely thankful to all my staff, both teaching, non-teaching, clinical, and basic sciences people. It has been a wonderful journey with all of them. And finally, if I have come this far in life, it's probably because of the unstinting support, the enthusiasm, the cooperation, the encouragement, and above all, a helping hand that has been provided to me by the outstanding faculty that I have. I'm very proud of the fact that I am only one among them, and it is just by virtue of the fact that I have more gray hair that I believe that I lead them. But for them, I wouldn't be where I am. And may I once again, on behalf of the management, principal, all the staff members of the Ragas Dental College, and my faculty members in the Department of Orthodontics in particular, thank the Dental Council of India for giving me this opportunity. It is an honor not bestowed on me, but on the institution and to the specialty and to a parent body, the Indian Orthodontic Society, for making orthodontics come to the limelight and organizing a webinar and giving me an opportunity to initiate a webinar in orthodontics. Once again, my thanks to the President, and I now hand over the mic to the moderator, Dr. Sainath. I will be failing in my duty if I also do not thank so many people, Dr. Virendra Goyal, Dr. Saha, Dr. Mukesh, and the technical team. This would not have been possible but for their untiring efforts over the last several weeks. And of course, we burnt the midnight oil yesterday to ensure that this presentation really lived up to your standards. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Sainath.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna. Krishna?
Yeah, we can ask.
Yeah, you are hearing? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation. And also you are able to align the virtual gatherings thought on malocclusion and its consequences. Well done. A lot of questions for you, and so many questions still coming in. The first question we'll take is, up to what age you can give orthodontic treatment?
There is no upper age limit. Age is not a limiting factor for orthodontics. In the past, it was believed that the ideal age for orthodontics was during the adolescent age group and the teenagers. But today we know that adult orthodontics is grown very well. And part of the reason is because of the development in all of our sister specialties like periodontics, restorative, and oral and maxillofacial surgery. So with team effort, we can do orthodontics at any age, as long as the underlying bone quality is good and there is no major limiting factor like any systemic disease. Age is not a limiting factor. In fact, in the Western countries with the longevity of the life going up to 100, there are people at the age of 70 who are looking for a new job or new opportunities in life. And most of them seek orthodontic treatment because, they want to look good before they look for new avenues in their life.
Thank you. The next question is, what are the different type of appliances available? Any new appliances come? Particularly, they want to know about removable appliances. Any new removable appliances available in the market?
There are a lot of appliances, and orthodontic science has two parts. One is the science part and the art part. Material science has advanced so much there's constantly new material that is knocking at our doors. We started with removable appliances using acrylic and stainless steel wires. Then we moved on to fixed appliance, which most people know. Then came the opportunity to change the material. Instead of doing metal braces, we have ceramic braces. Instead of having braces on the outside, we could have braces on the inner side of the teeth. So this is called as lingual orthodontics. Today there is yet another area which is called as aligners or clear aligners. And these are removable plastics which can be used, and it's still an emerging area. So in certain malocclusions, it is very useful. It's like a removable appliance, but it is clear plastic. So they tend to move the teeth just like wires and brackets do.
Thank you. The next question is, when the patient's got an implant teeth, can we go for orthodontic treatment or not?
He can. In fact, having an implant can be an advantage. Today in orthodontics, one of the exciting areas is to use an implant, or a better terminology would be a temporary implant device, to act as an anchor to perform some tooth movement which was very challenging and which was considered not possible in the past. So if an individual already has an osseointegrated implant, then that acts as a natural anchorage because the implant is integrated into the bone, and it can be used as an anchor to move the rest of the teeth. In the past, we used to use headgears when we wanted anchorage control, but today, even in the absence of headgear, we can use either a temporary anchorage device, or in adults, if they have these kind of osseointegrated implants, we can take advantage of them as a source of anchorage.
Thank you, Krishna. The next question is, what are the COVID-19 precautions you take in orthodontic clinics when you treat orthodontic patients?
I think that's a very valid question, because as dentists, all of us are very concerned about what we should do and what we shouldn't. The fundamental precaution is the same that we do in any dental office in terms of screening the patient and ensuring that he is not somebody who is positive and is not does not have an active infection. Then once the screening procedures are done, we can perform orthodontic procedures, but there are some procedures one has to be careful about. For example, bonding of the teeth involves using a water spray to, after we etch the enamel, to wash off the excess enamel. So one has to be careful when they use the three-way syringe. Similarly, removal of the appliance or debonding is another area where when we use an appliance to remove the when we use pliers to remove the appliance, we tend to leave some composite on the surface of the teeth which needs to be removed. Sometimes it requires using aerosol procedures, and we all know that that is not acceptable. And if you can postpone debonding, it is better to do that. Then comes the question of the sterilization. This is probably a wonderful opportunity for all of us to ensure that our sterilization procedures are foolproof, so both the dentist and the patients are not subjected to this kind of viral infection.
The next question is about the frenectomy. So they wanted to know whether the frenectomy can be done during the orthodontic treatment or after the orthodontic treatment or before the orthodontic.
The answer is very interesting because it is yes to all three. There is a school of thought which says you must do frenectomy before orthodontic treatment because the frenum is the cause for the diastema. So unless you remove the frenum, there is no point in moving the teeth. There are others who believe that frenectomy can be done after initiating orthodontic treatment, because once you apply orthodontic force and then if you do a frenectomy, The frenectomy procedure itself will alter the response of the bone, and when you apply orthodontic force, the teeth will move much quickly into the injured area where the frenum has been removed. And finally, there are those who believe that you can align the teeth and do the frenectomy at the end, because when you do the frenectomy at the end, it produces a scar tissue, and we know that scar tissue tends to contract, and when the scar tissue tends to contract, it acts as a natural retainer because it will hold the teeth together and will not allow the diastema to open. So all three schools of thought are acceptable.
Thank you. The next question is they wanted to know, can you treat mentally challenged child?
Yeah, we do require some kind of an effort, because we should not do anything which is very difficult for them. We routinely treat a lot of cleft lip and palate individuals, but in addition, we also treat some mentally challenged people. The problem with them is, if you give them a device like an expansion appliance and ask them to turn, they may not be intelligent enough to do that. If you give appliances which require very high maintenance, then it becomes a problem, because as such the oral hygiene is compromised. If you give appliances which are very cumbersome for them to adapt, it's not a good idea. But there's no contraindication as long as it is warranted, both from point of view of improving the longevity of the dentition and for enhancing the function. We can use simple devices to achieve reasonably good results.
Thank you. One more question about this molar extraction. What is your experience with the first molar extraction during orthodontic treatment?
I don't think that first molar extraction you said,
Yes.
right? Yeah, there are some Western countries, for example in Britain, the incidence of caries used to be very high, and most children would lose their first molars very early. So when they lose the first molar, we can still do orthodontic treatment and bring the second molar into alignment. Today, with the advent of temporary anchorage devices, if one has lost the first molar, we can use those anchorage devices even in an adult and bring the second molar in the position of the first molar, and then the third molar can be substituted for the second molar. So molar extraction, though unfortunate, is still a viable option to do orthodontic treatment.
This your experience with mutilated cases?
Yes, we do see a lot of adults now, and many adults come to us not because they really want straight teeth, but they want to have other procedures like, they want to have a crown or an implant. So in these individuals, with whatever teeth that are remaining, we try to correct the axial inclination of the teeth. When we not only correct the axial inclination, we also alter the position. So this will enhance the quality of bone. It also creates the optimum amount of space for the restorative dentist to put a crown or an implant. Then, of course, if you have to do orthognathic surgery, then if they have mutilated teeth, then it is better to gather the teeth together before the surgeon can do an orthognathic procedure.
Thank you, Krishna. One more question about retention. What is the best retainers for the orthodontic treatment or post-orthodontic treatment you can give? What is the best retention appliance?
Retention depends upon the original malocclusion. There are some malocclusions that's corrected which are self-retaining. For example, an anterior crossbite. But if you have very severely crowded teeth, especially in the lower jaw, then it would be worthwhile to have a fixed retainer on the lingual surface of the lower teeth. If one has closed the diastema, then again it makes sense, because the transeptal fibers have a dirty tendency to stretch again and reopen the spaces. So the memory of the transeptal fibers is supposed to last for nearly 380 days. So in those instances, it is worthwhile to give a fixed retainer in the upper. But as otherwise, one can do away with a poly retainer or a beg wrap-around retainer to maintain the arch.
Thank you, Krishna. The next one is an interesting question. They ask about how to insulate yourself against this consumer protection or any legal problems when you are treating orthodontic cases.
I'm certainly not an expert, and I'm sure the DCI will be in a better light to ensure how the dentists in this country are protected from these lawsuits. But nevertheless, I think as far as one takes precautions and one has the patient's consent, to do whatever treatment, and it has been explained properly, and highlighting not only the benefits but also informing them about some of the limitations that may happen. Or if you are producing a compromised treatment, for example, if it's a skeletal problem and the patient does not want orthognathic surgery, or if it's a case which requires extraction and we are forced to do non-extraction, then the patient must be informed and a written consent must be obtained. I think that's all the light that I can throw from a legal standpoint.
What are the cases general practitioner can deal?
Yeah. A lot of roles that general dentists can play. Orthodontics is divided into preventive orthodontics and interceptive orthodontics and corrective orthodontics. Preventive orthodontics and interceptive orthodontics can be routinely be done by general dentists because they are the first one to whom an individual comes in contact if they have a malocclusion, and they have a contact with the parents, or the parents' first contact when the child has a malocclusion is the general dentist. If a teeth is retained and it has stayed beyond its time, then the general dentist should be prudent to advise a radiograph and ensure that the permanent teeth is there, and then suggest the removal of retained deciduous teeth. If a teeth has been lost ahead of its time, then a general dentist or a periodontist should always go in and place a space maintainer if he knows that there is going to be a considerable delay between the loss of teeth and the eruption of the permanent teeth. Then, of course, if there is a spacing between the teeth, which can be very well managed with some removable appliances like diastema closing appliances, mild crowdings can be corrected. But the most important thing is, and this is one take-home message I would like to, if you didn't listen to the rest of my lecture, that's okay. Even today, we get a lot of people who come to us with severe malocclusion. And when we ask them, they say, why did you not get treated? They say, oh, we were told by our dentist that we have to wait till the age of 12 years before we can start orthodontic treatment. That is very unfortunate, and those concepts are outdated. Today, with the change in global environment and the hormone balance, we find that the individuals tend to mature early. Secondly, if the goal is only to remove teeth and align, age 12 is okay, or even later on is all right. But if the goal is to try to correct the jaw basis, if somebody has a class 3 and then we want to do functional jaw orthopedics, or somebody has a maxilla which is narrow and we want to widen with a maxillary expander and orthopedic device, or if you want to give a functional appliance to enhance the growth of the mandible, then the best time is to catch them early. In fact, the Indian Orthodontic Society has given a guideline and suggested that the age 7 would be appropriate for the first screening by an orthodontist. So this is an age when we can recognize the presence. So I would encourage all the general dentists and members of the other specialty and the students and the future dentists that if ever you feel that there is something going wrong, I think it is not worthwhile to wait and wish it away. It would be better either to seek an opinion or at least inform the patient that it requires the services of a specialist, so that if there is a malocclusion that can be corrected instead of waiting for it to get worse and later on having more complicated treatment.
What is the duration of having fixed orthodontic appliances? What is the duration? Any specific duration is there?
It depends on the severity of the malocclusion. Something like a diastema can be closed in 2 to 3 months. A crossbite can be corrected very quickly. But if it involves only the teeth, the duration of the treatment may be less. But it involves both the upper and the lower jaw, then the duration could be more. But if it also requires other procedures, interceptive, combined procedures like a perio or a surgery, then we have to wait for the periodontal treatment to be completed before we can initiate orthodontics. And the surgeon has to wait for the pre-surgical orthodontic preparation to over before he can do surgery. And then we have to finish the treatment. There are also other new adjuncts that are developing which can accelerate tooth movement, but that it's still at an experimental stage. So hopefully in the future, the younger generation will practice in a time where the duration of treatment can be lessened.
The next question is surgery first. Which one you'll do? Surgery first or ortho later? First ortho or surgery?
That's a very contemporary thought, and there is a school which believes that we can do orthodontics just for a month and then do orthodontic surgery and then do orthodontics for an extended duration. This is gaining a lot of momentum. But in some specific cases, for example, an individual who's got a class 3 with a mandible which is prognatic, then it is very to do very limited orthodontic maybe for a month and then do orthodontic surgery and later on do post-surgical orthodontics. But if it involves multiple movements like double jaw surgery and multiple piece osteotomy in the maxilla, correcting multidimensional issues like sagittal, vertical, and transverse, then it is very challenging to do surgery first. So one has to be very careful with the selection of cases before deciding whether to do surgery first or conventional orthodontics and orthodontic surgery.
Any specific appliances is available for snoring?
Yes, there are a lot of devices. One is, of course, what is called as a mandibular advancement device. What it essentially does is like a functional appliance which tends to bring the mandible in front and keep the mandible there at night so that the pharyngeal airway tends to increase. So this is very useful in some cases, but it is not a cure-all. The severity of the obstructive sleep apnea has to be evaluated, but this is a non-invasive procedure, and most patients who do not want to wear a CPAP machine or to have a surgery for correcting the jaw position, then there is no harm in using this device.
What is the best fixed orthodontic appliance? Is there any choices there?
I don't think there is anything that is called as best, because what makes the specialty of orthodontics unique is there's always a constant improvement. There are several techniques which we have seen, like Edward Angle, who practiced 120 years ago, gave us the Edgewise appliance and he said, use it, this is the latest and best. But I think from then to now, in the last 120 years, we have had more than 120 appliances, and every time there is something that is happening which is an improvement on what we had earlier. So it all depends on the type of malocclusion and individual's training and comfort level, and of course the patient's choice in terms of having appliances on the inner side or having an align.
One question about lingual orthodontics. That said, this is better or labial appliance is better. Which is better?
Lingual appliance is superior because it's aesthetically very superior because it virtually does not show. But it requires special training. It requires a lot of adjustment from the patient because the appliance is on the inner side and the discomfort level is quite high. But in terms of quality of results, the labial is slightly better because the control is much better. But certain malocclusions can be treated as effectively with lingual as with labial. So I don't think we can compare lingual and labial. They're indicated for two different reasons. Lingual, when the patient is very particular about the appliance not showing, but labial as otherwise for all other situations.
This is about the charges. They're asking, some appliances are costly, some appliances are cheap. They're asking, what is the real charges?
It depends.
Or cost of the appliance. Yes, sir.
It really depends, there is no particular price. I think it is not the question of the appliance, but it is the question of service which has to be evaluated. It varies from individual to individual, place to place, and from country to country. And I don't think one can look at a uniform price like, this is not a commodity on which you can attach a price. This is a service, and that's how it has to be looked into.
Now the question hours is over. So I
would once again like to thank Dr. Sainath, the President DCI, and all the office bearers of the DCI, the technical team, and to each and every participant who has been here. Thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful career, and for those students, I can only tell you that I have made a living as a dentist and an orthodontist, and given a choice, I would like to do that all over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the illustrious lecture. I commend Dr. NRK for his stellar lecture. Next week we have a webinar which will be streamed live on 9/8/2020 on allied topics by Santosh Mayekar. He is an eminent speaker from Maharashtra, former member of Dental Council, is a elite speaker. Because this is topic also very interesting one. I am sure they'll get more questions than this when this topic will be discussed. Will I be happy in my profession? It's $1 million questions. Then the moderator will be Dr. Ashik Gupta, Principal, Himachal Pradesh Government Dental College, Dean, Faculty of Dental Science, Himachal Pradesh University. Is another vibrant individual, and definitely the next seminar also will be a vibrant one as today's. I thank Dr. NRK for your stellar performance, which you are sure has whet all our appetite to know more. I thank our beloved DCA President Sir, Dr. Majumdar Sir, whose stewardship guide DCI so effortlessly through the turbulent time of this COVID-19. My sincere gratitude to Secretary Dr. Saga Sir and all the office bearers and DCI members, Dr. Mukesh, Dr. Virender Goyal, Dr. Sunitji, and all the people who worked on the technical side. Last but not the least, I thank each and every individual who has attended this session. Thank you once and all. And before closing this, I have some announcement to be made. In the last webinar, there are so many colleges have participated, and it was overwhelming response from all the colleges. But there are 5 colleges where there is a maximum number of participation was seen. The first one is Sardar Patel Postgraduate Institute of Dental Science, Manipal College of Dental Science, Mangalore, Sri Aurobindo Institute of Dental Science, Buddha Institute of Dental Science, Rama Dental College of Kanpur. Lot of participation from this college. Congratulations. I hope the other colleges also will follow the footprint of this. Once again, I thank you all for this illustrious program. I thank Almighty, and I thank everybody. It is a very good interactive session and very informative one. Thank you very much. I thank God, and Jai Hind. And I request the people who submit, there are feedback forms are available. Please fill it up and submit it. Feedback, please apply. Please fill up all the feedback and submit it immediately today itself. Because your feedback matters. It helps us a lot to get more your views and to improve more our DCA performance and individual performance. Thank you very much.